my name is Christopher Norlin and welcome to my presentation on gasoline taxes and alternatives to reduce emissions. Today I'll explain why Europe taxes gasoline heavily and what the disadvantages would be if the US tried the same, and what other policies might work better. So here's what I'll be covering today. First, the reasons why Europe has such high gasoline taxes, and second, the disadvantages of applying a high federal gas tax in the US, and third, some alternatives to reduce emissions and which one that is most effective. European countries levy high gasoline taxes mainly to discourage excessive driving and reduce pollution. The revenue funds public transportation and green projects, which makes it easier for people to rely on trains, buses, or biking instead of cars. This also helps cut greenhouse gas emissions. Now, the advantages, which are very clear. It's first and foremost cleaner air, healthier cities, and more reliable transit systems. High gas taxes also encourage smaller, more fuel-efficient cars and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. These policies support sustainability while still providing governments with steady revenue. However, the US is very different. Americans rely heavily on cars, especially in rural and suburban areas. A high federal gasoline tax would hit low-income families hardest, raising the cost of commuting, and it would also increase the price of goods since trucking is vital for US shipping. And unlike Europe, public transportation in much of the US is limited, and for these reasons, raising gas taxes in the US is politically unpopular and socially difficult. So, what are the alternatives? Some options include carbon pricing or cap and trade programs that charge industries for emissions, subsidies for electric vehicles to make them more affordable, stronger fuel efficiency standards for car manufacturers, and public transit investments like better buses and trains, and congestion pricing in busy city centers. Each of these policies can help reduce emissions in different ways. So, which one works the best? Economists often argue that carbon pricing is the most efficient because it applies across the entire economy, not just to gasoline. But in practice, a combination is best. Subsidies for electric vehicles and investments in public transportation give people real alternatives, while carbon pricing sets the long-term signal to cut emissions. So, in conclusion, Europe uses high gasoline taxes successfully to reduce driving and fund sustainable transit. In the US, though, this approach would create too many hardships because of our reliance on cars, and instead of a mix of carbon pricing, EV incentives and better transit options would likely work best. Together, these policies could reduce emissions without unfairly burdening drivers. Thank you so much for listening.